Bismillah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, thumma amma ba'd. To proceed. First, I'm happy to be here, happy to be in Sydney, and particularly in Masjid al-Imam Ahmad. You can't get any better than this. Alhamdulillah. So today, inshallah, I was asked to talk about disagreement without discord, and inshallah we'll try to talk about this. We'll try to talk about disagreement without discord, and I will use Imam Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah as a case study. And why Imam Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah as a case study? Because he's someone who did not shy away from disagreement or shy away from polemics when they were warranted. Sometimes when we try to address an issue, like, we can get biased simply by the name of the lecture. Like, I come here to talk to you about disagreement without discord, and how to avoid discord, and how to avoid conflict. So I basically get motivated by the name of the lecture to ignore any counter argument. That happens to all of us. So then I come to talk to you only about ulfa and mahabba and things of that nature, and how we can try to get along while completely ignoring any counter-argument, any need for polemics, any need for principled positions, principled disagreement. So let's talk about disagreement without discord, and let's try to be as impartial as we can, and not neglect or ignore the two sides of any proposition. Any proposition has two sides, and you could always be excessive or extreme. Extremism means what? Tatarruf means what in Arabic? To basically attach to yourself to one tarf, to one end of the spectrum, to one side, one extreme. So there is usually a wasat, and that's what Islam is about. It's about al-wasatiyya. جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. We made you a nation that is wasat. And al-wasat does not necessarily mean taking a middle point, like a geometrical middle point between two sides. No, al-wasat is what is right, what is good. Because the spectrum itself, it can sometimes be shifted, skewed to the right or to the left based on people's cultures and personal dispositions. So the spectrum may in itself be skewed. So the middle may look to be like a little extreme to the right or extreme to the left, based on the cultural context and personal dispositions. So that the true middle that we are seeking is which middle? Is what is correct according to the Sharia, what is in accordance with the Sharia, and what's in compliance with the Sharia, with the Quran and the Sunnah, as understood and practiced by the first generation of this ummah. So, do we need polemics? Do we need refutations? Do we need people basically responding to each other? Do we need to write responses, refutations, polemics, and so on and so forth? Certainly we do. Polemics have been an integral part to Islamic discourse. And our scholars have been involved in polemics, scholars from different backgrounds, they have been involved in polemics. So if we say that we don't need any polemics, we don't need any responses, we don't need any, we should just get along and, avoid any contentious subjects, then that is basically dishonest, and that is not sincere, because ultimately we're all serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if we believe that we need to respond to a proposition or an argument or a position, then we should respond to that argument or position. So polemics have been integral to the Islamic discourse, that I would dare to say that disagreement, defined orthodoxy, contributed to the definition of orthodoxy more than agreement. Disagreement contributed to the definition of orthodoxy more than agreement, because although in Islam it's more orthopraxy, but what is excusable discourse among Ahl Sunnah? This is defined sometimes by the disagreement. We say the positions of Ahl Sunnah range from here to there, and that is orthodoxy, or this is the Sunni discourse on this matter. It ranges from here to there. It is hardly ever a dot. It's usually a circle, and there is a spectrum, and we look at that spectrum and we define the borders, and we say this is orthodoxy, and beyond this would be heterodoxy. So then, if polemics have been and should continue to be integral to proper Islamic discourse, how do we do it? How do we do it? That's the important question that we have to ask ourselves. And I have always liked to approach any difficult subject from the paradigm of ikhlas and mutaba'ah. And try to do this yourself. You'll find it easy. It will facilitate the approach. It will give you a roadmap to any talk, any discussion. Ikhlas and mutaba'ah. Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad was asked about Allah's saying, لِيَبْلُوكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, to test you. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وعلى كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. To test you, He who created life and death, to test you who's better in deeds. To test you who is better in deeds. So they asked him what is better, and he said, أخلصه أصوابه. أحسن عملا أخلصه أصوابه. أخلصه, most sincere. أصوابه, most correct. And when they talked about sawab, they meant what? They meant in compliance with, in harmony with, adhering to the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So the way of the Prophet ﷺ is the way is the correct way, and whatever it is that is compliant with and adhering to the way of the Prophet ﷺ is the correct way. So that's what they meant. So how do we use this paradigm to talk about polemics? The first thing is sincerity. Sincerity. How do we do it sincerely is a big question mark. And I usually say, start with the how, with the why before the what and the how. Start with the why before the what and the how, because the what and the how are going to be much easier than the why. Are going to be much easier than the why, to basically guarantee that you're doing it for the right purpose, right objective, right reason, will be much harder than doing it the right way. Because controlling behavior is much easier than controlling your niyyah, your intentions, and ensuring that you don't have ulterior motives, that you're not doing it out of hasad, envy, out of baghi, aggression, out of hawa, bias and desires, out of competition, munafasa. There are many reasons why people do things, and particularly engagement in polemics. So to ensure that you're doing it for the sake of Allah and that you're being sincere, it should be your first concern, and you should spend a lot of time on the why question. So how do we verify that we're sincere? You verify this by testing yourself. And I will use Imam Taqiyuddin as an example here. So when did he start to do to write responses? What else was he doing in addition to writing responses to people? Well, he was teaching tafsir al-Quran at age 21 in al-Masjid al-Umawi. His ibadah, he used to spend time in dhikr from Salat al-Fajr until the sun rises well into, the sky. So well after shuruq. That used to be like all that time was dedicated to dhikr, and he used to repeat al-Fatiha quite often, looking up and repeating al-Fatiha quite often. And he used to say that this is my early morning meal, and if I don't eat that, or if I don't get that energy, I can't, go through the day. So, are you doing this? Are like those who are involved? If you're involved, or you want to be involved in polemics, is that your kind of ibadah? And if you find energy in writing responses, but you don't find energy in Qiyam al-Layl, you ask yourself why? Why am I finding energy in responding to people and refuting people, but I can't find enough energy to pray my night prayers, or to make my azkar, or to be regular with my awrad, or to actually study, so that my polemics would be guided, and they would have depth and meaning. So that is one thing that we want to pay attention to. How dedicated are you to your ibadah? The other thing that the other test of sincerity is also, you want to be doing polemics when you need to. If someone else is doing it, and someone else who is more knowledgeable than you is doing it, then you don't need to do it. And what you can do sometimes is basically share nowadays we have to speak in this language because most of the stuff is done on social media. So you want to share like a good article by someone more knowledgeable. If you feel that the truth needs to be clarified, some issue is is becoming murky, some person or some people are muddying a particular issue, and the truth needs to be clarified, simply share a good, balanced article written by a qualified scholar, and that's it. You would have done your part. If you're really concerned about the ummah, you would have done your part. Why do you think that your input is really needed and urgently needed? If you share the good input from someone else, you would have done your job if you feel that something needs to be clarified. Another way, to test your sincerity and to verify your sincerity is to see if you take pleasure in refuting people, if you find pleasure in responding and in refuting people, and if you find pleasure in responding to people and in refuting people, then you want to ask yourself, this is not normal. This is unusual. To be confrontational, to like that environment of confrontation and conflict, that is not telling of, a balanced personality. You want to respond when when it feels difficult, burdensome for you. you're pushing yourself to respond, because otherwise you don't like confrontation. You don't like to hurt people. You don't like to cause animosity or to be hostile. You feel that, okay, I'll have to respond. I have to clarify the truth. And if that is your feeling, then you go ahead. Then you go ahead. Another issue also when it comes to sincerity, something that you want to consider. Imam Ibn Hazm rahimahullah said that when you advise someone, انصح سرا لا جهرا وتعريضا لا تصريحا. So advise them privately, not publicly. تعريضا implicitly, not explicitly. He said unless they can't understand it, then you will have to be explicit. And then ولا تنصح على شرط القبول. Don't give advice basically expecting acceptance, expecting that your advice will be accepted. You're doing it for the sake of Allah, but don't do it on condition of being accepted or with expectation, feeling entitlement to being listened to and to being obeyed. Because if you deviate from this, he says, فإنك ظالم لا ناصح. You are an oppressor, not an advisor. ظالم لا ناصح. مريد للملك والطاعة. You want to exercise your sovereignty and you want to ask for obedience. You want people to obey you so that you can exercise your sovereignty over people. And all of these are signs of lack of sincerity, that this is not really being done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not really being done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first thing that we really have to pay attention to is why we're doing this. And is it really for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When it is disproportionate, when your involvement in polemics is disproportionate, like you specialize in polemics, some people specialize in polemics. That is also, very unhealthy, and it should be telling that this is not really for Allah. If it is for Allah, you would be fair to all of the other obligations. Our scholars used to say, "Wajibat akthar min al-awqat." There are more obligations than there is time. So there are so many obligations. You should be taking care of your ibadah. You should be taking care of your learning. You should be taking care of your family. You should be taking care of your masjid. You should be taking care of your community. You should be participating in the soup kitchen, for instance. You should be participating in cleaning your masjid. You should be participating, starting whatever organizations, social services, this, that. Why are you not involved in any of that? Do you remember the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said to his Sahaba, "Man asbaha minkum al-yawma sa'iman." Abu Bakr said, "I, O Messenger of Allah." "Man aada minkum al-yawma," "I, O Messenger." "Man tabi'a minkum al-yawma," "I, O Messenger of Allah." "Man at'ama minkum al-yawma miskinan." "Man salla minkum al-yawma janazah." "I, O Messenger of Allah." So, who woke up fasting? I. Abu Bakr says, "I did." O Messenger of Allah. Who fed a hungry person? Who visited a sick person? Who followed the janazah? Every time he asks, Abu Bakr says, "I, O Messenger of Allah." The Prophet ﷺ said, no one has ever done them together except that they'll enter paradise. Why? Because they are there wherever Allah wants them. Just be wherever Allah wants to see you. So if there is a need for whatever needs people have, you're there you're there where Allah wants to see you. Every good thing. So you're not even, forget about polemics, even salah and saum. Even salah and saum. Of course, salah and saum would be much better than polemics. But even salah and saum, sometimes we can specialize in one area, and which is good. Inshallah, if you like to fast a lot, you enter the Jannah from Bab al-Rayyan. But this is not the optimal ibadah. The optimal ibadah is to do everything Allah wants of you based on the need. If there is a need for this, if there is a need for that, you're not basically loving the ibadah. It's out of love for Allah, not for the ibadah itself. So if you have love for siyam, love for salah, that's beautiful love. But more superior to this is to have love for Allah. So, you're doing the salah or the siyam or the, hospitality, hosting the guest, jihad, service, feeding the poor, tending to your parents, looking after your kids, like earning a livelihood for your family and so on. You're doing what you need to do, everything you need to do, everything Allah wants of you. It doesn't matter. What matters is to be in His service, Azza wa Jal. The ibadah itself does not matter to you. What matters is to be in His service. And we're talking here about ibadah like siyam and salah and hajj and umrah and sadaqah even. Every type of ibadah. So you're not favoring some ibadah over another because of a personal inclination, because of a personal preference. It's all for Allah. And then you're doing everything and you're being wherever Allah wants you to be. So Imam Taqiyuddin rahimahullah said, الدين كله إخلاص للحق ورحمة بالخلق. So all of the deen revolves around devotion to the real. Al-Haq is the true one, the real, and mercy for the creations. So, ikhlasun lil-haq, rahmatun bil-khalq, that is all the deen. So ikhlas would be the first thing that we have to consider. The second, I told you the paradigm I like to follow is the paradigm of ikhlas and mutaba'ah. The second part is, to do it right. We talked about doing it for the right reason. Now, that's great, but we also need to do it right. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, "Kam min muridan lil haqq la yablughu." How many seek good but don't reach it, don't attain it, because they're not doing it right. They're not, our guide back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our guide to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you could want Allah, but you're not following the right guide. You don't get to your destination. You don't get what you want unless you want the right thing and you take the right destination and you take the right path to the right destination. So now we need to do it right. Imam Taqiyuddin rahimahullah says that no one should be arguing without two qualities. And those two qualities, we can basically put everything under them. Al-ilm wal-adl. Ilm and adl. There are two qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warned us of. إِنَّا عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ فَأَبَيْنَ أَن يَحْمِلْنَهَا وَأَشْفَقْنَ مِنْهَا وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانُ إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. Basically, Allah offered the amana, the trust, which is the choice, the trust to choose between right and wrong. We offered it to the samawat and ard and jibal and heavens and the earth and the mountains, and they declined to accept it, and man took it on. Man accepted to have a choice. Then Allah said, إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. Verily he was like zalum would be oppressor, like transgressor, oppressor, wrongdoer. Jahul would be ignorant. So two things you want to rid yourself of before you return to Allah. Two qualities you want to rid yourself of. You want to remove the jahl and the dhulm, the ignorance and the oppression. And everything you do in this life, you want to do it with ilm and adl, with knowledge and fairness. Knowledge and fairness. So let's go to the issue of polemics. And now, how do we do polemics with ilm? Let's first focus on ilm, that is knowledge. If you are a muqallid, can you basically condemn a mujtahid? Can you respond to a mujtahid, refute a mujtahid, and condemn the position of a mujtahid? No. Therefore, the most you can do, if you feel passionate about something, like I told you, the most you can do, find a good article, share it, and don't get involved in back and forth refutations and arguments and so on and so forth. If you would have done your job by finding a good article by a qualified scholar and sharing it. And if those people who want to, no one should want to do polemics, but the people who are qualified to do polemics, and I said that I'll take Imam Taqiyuddin here as a case study, because people say, well, when you talk to people, because people know that, I have a lot of admiration for the Imam, they say, well, Imam Taqiyuddin or Imam Taymiyyah or Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah said such and such, and you responded, and okay. Do you know what it took for him to respond? Do you know that when he was 30 years of age, people who were his opponents said, we have not seen someone like him for the last 400 years. No one was seen like him for the last 400. Do you know what 400 years means? When someone is born in 661 after the Hijrah and died 728 after the Hijrah, what does 400 years mean? We're talking about, from the 4th century after Hijrah. And who said this? This actually is reported from two great Imams. One of them was an opponent of Imam Taymiyyah. Probably he said it before they had a dispute, Ibn Zamalkani, rahimahullah. And the other one is in Mizzi. And the other one, they both said the same statement. Nothing like this was seen in the last 400 years. Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, another great Imam as well, who straddled the Maliki and Shafi'i madhabs, he said, I didn't think that Allah is still creating people like you. I did not think that Allah is still creating people like you. And he was in his 30s at that time. I can go on for half a day with testimonies of that nature from Imams of that caliber. But also, when it comes to logic and the rational sciences, because many people neglect some of the sciences and focus on some and neglect some. He didn't do that. He wouldn't have been able to refute the logicians had he not had mastery of logic. In fact, there is a known philosopher, Moroccan philosopher by the name of Taha Abdul Rahman, who is they call him, they consider him a Ghazalian. He certainly has a great admiration for Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, but he's not Ghazalian per se. He may take Ghazalian tasawwuf, but when it comes to rational sciences, he actually sides with Imam Taymiyyah on his refutation of logic. And he says that Ibn Taymiyyah was not an ordinary logician, he was a mujaddid, كان منطقيا مجددا. He was a renewer of the discipline of logic, and he put together a refutation of Aristotelian logic that people now are basically studying and appreciating. People now, like Tayyib Bouazza is another philosopher from Morocco also. Shaykh al-Allama Shibli al-Nu'mani, he recognized this, and he said something that I would not like to repeat, about, a comparison between Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam al-Ghazali. But Shaykh Shibli al-Nu'mani, rahimahullah, said that there is no one that is close to Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, when it comes to the rational sciences. Rational sciences. So he did not, whether he was exactly, the point is not the comparison. The point is he mastered the rational sciences to the point of critiquing Aristotle with a critique that is, that people recognize to be a very sound critique that many of the modern logicians agree with. So before you embark on, critiquing any discipline or any subject, you have to have mastery of it. You have to have mastery of that subject or that discipline to criticize it. So many times what we suffer from is premature, let's be kind here, but no, many times people engage in things that prematurely, before the right time, and this is not behaving with ilm. This is not behaving with ilm. You need to master the sciences that you're talking about before you engage in polemics. If you have not mastered the sciences, you can be a good teacher. Just teach whatever you believe in. Teach the books. You're here. This is Markaz al-Imam Ahmad. Teach Zad. Teach Ghidha al-Albab. Teach teach Lum'at al-I'tiqad. Teach Umdat al-Fiqh. Teach Lum'at al-I'tiqad. Teach those books. Teach those books. Those are great books of our great imams. Teach them. But engagement in polemics is different from teaching. Engagement in polemics, you really need to have mastered those sciences to engage in polemics. Now, the other issue that is important is you need to be, when you engage in the mashayikh, the scholars, the ulama, the a'imma that we talk about, who responded to each other. They responded to each other. Yes, they wrote refutations. They wrote responses. But these responses were not Facebook posts. Because that is easy. I mean, like writing a Facebook post, it will take, and then what substance is there in a Facebook post? Like, how much substance? So when Imam Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, wanted to respond, wanted to write a refutation of, the speculative theologians, the argument of the speculative theologians that basically he at least believed to have compromised the primacy of the text of Revelation. At least that is his conviction, that putting reason above the text of Revelation will cause like an epistemic crisis. So, do you know how? Do you know that he wrote a response to the Christians, Yahud and Nasara, and this response came in about 7 books, 7 volumes. That is Al-Jawab al-Sahih liman baddala din al-Masih. So, do you know that Minhaj al-Sunnah al-Nabawiyya? That is his response to Shia. It comes in about 9 volumes. That Dar Ta'arud al-Aql comes in about 11 volumes. So these are the responses. So, not Facebook posts. 7 volumes, 9 volumes, 11 volumes. What I want to say is, people will not live, among the ruins. If you either provide an alternative narrative, or stay silent. Because to demolish, if your job is only to demolish, people will not be able to live among the ruins. بين الأطلال. So you either have an alternative, complete narrative that you believe to be better, and you believe to be more righteous. Share it, but to simply poke, holes in other narratives without supplying an alternative, that's just not reasonable, not good, not conducive to any goodness. So then we should not do these things prematurely, should not be involved in them prematurely, and then when we try to critique any discipline or any proposition, any narrative, then we will have to provide an alternative, a complete alternative, after we have mastered that particular science. So now we covered sincerity, and we covered the first arm of correctness, or compliance with the deen and sharia and so on, and said the first arm is to do things with ilm, with knowledge. The second arm is to do things with adl, that is justice, that is fairness, that is objectivity, that is to avoid personal attacks, and that is of extreme importance. So doing polemics, basically, what is happening nowadays mostly does not belong at all to any polemics in our history, does not belong at all to those great imams writing books, basically to present their narrative, to present, their sort of ideas, and simultaneously refute the counter-narrative, if there is a counter-narrative, to refute the counter-narrative. What is happening nowadays is completely different. So I will read some of the, statements here. I will read some of the statements of Imam Taqiyuddin. When I was talking about sincerity, I forgot to tell you that one test of sincerity for Imam Taqiyuddin is that he fought with the people who imprisoned him. He fought alongside the very, Mamluk state. He fought with Dawlat al-Mamalik al-Bahariyya, the Mamluk state that put him in prison 7 or 8 times. These are the people that he fought to defend. He fought to defend Dawlat al-Mamalik that put him in prison 7 or 8 times. I mean, if you want to test your sincerity, that's a good test of sincerity. Like, we all know Imam Ahmad and how he used to make dua for al-Mu'tasim, when al-Mu'tasim went to war in Amuriyya, and how Imam Ahmad was making dua for al-Mu'tasim. Al-Mu'tasim is the one who was flogging him, is the one who's imprisoning him. So he was making dua for the one who was imprisoning him and flogging him, torturing him. That's a test of sincerity. And when you fight alongside the very Salatin and very authorities that put you in prison, that is a test of sincerity. So refutations should be objective. Refutations should be objective. And you should be working to reconcile between different factions and different groups. I'll read you a statement here from Imam Taymiyyah rahimahullah. He said, والناس يعلمون أنه كان بين الحنبلية والأشعرية وحشة ومنافرة وأنا كنت من أعظم الناس تأليفا لقلوب المسلمين وطلبا لاتفاق كلمتهم واتباعا لما أمرنا به من الاعتصام بحبل الله وأزلت عامة ما كان في النفوس من الوحشة وبينت لهم أن الأشعري كان من أجل المتكلمين المنتسبين إلى الإمام أحمد رحمه الله والمنتصرين لطريقه كما يذكر الأشعري ذلك في كتبه. So he says people know that there used to be animosity and antipathy between the Hanbalis and Ash'aris. I was one of the keenest on uniting the hearts of Muslims, seeking their agreement and calling on them to adhere to what we were commanded to do in holding on to the rope of Allah. I removed the general animosity that was present in people's hearts and clarified to them that al-Ash'ari, that's clarified to his fellow Hanbalis, that al-Ash'ari, rahimahullah, Imam Abu al-Hasan, was one of the greatest rationalist theologians who belonged to Imam Ahmad, who subscribed to the way of Imam Ahmad. May Allah have mercy on him and his likes. They were the defenders of his methodology, as al-Ash'ari himself mentions in his books. So that shows sincerity, but shows adl also in assessing people. When it comes to objectivity, versus personal attacks. When it comes to objectivity versus personal attacks, the people nowadays who engage in polemics, can they come together and have a meal or come together and pray in the masjid and stand next to each other and have amicable relationship? That would never happen because it's just like it's personal hostility. So that Imam Taqiyuddin rahimahullah sort of demonstrates the opposite of this. And there are so many examples. Like when he was put in prison, in Egypt, and he came out, he was critical of Ibn Arabi. And I say Ibn Arabi rahimahullah, you may have difficulties with this, but I consider Ibn Arabi to be Muslim. So, and I believe that Imam Taqiyuddin also considered him to be Muslim. And he was a brilliant writer, but his legacy had, some of the things that Ibn Arabi wrote were extremely difficult to reconcile. Some people have tried to reconcile, and there are certain great scholars and Muslim figures like Al-Alusi and Shawliullah and so on that have been able to reconcile, reconcile Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Arabi, to have love for both. But he had, and initially he appreciated, because Ibn Arabi's take also was not like the mutakallimin. So keep in mind that the Atharis and Sufis were closer to each other, particularly earlier on, than mutakallimin and Sufis. Atharis and Sufis. Like you will have, it may sound a little bit crazy now, but who's al-Harawi? Who's Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani? These are Atharis and Sufis. So there used to be more animosity, particularly before Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah. There used to be more animosity between mutakallimin and Sufi than Atharis and Sufis. And so it was the natural thing for a Sufi to be more Athari in their creedal orientation. Natural thing for Sufis to be more Athari in their creedal orientation. So So, Ibn Taymiyyah was very appreciative of Ibn Arabi's, writings until a certain point where he just couldn't take it anymore. And he was very critical of Ibn Arabi after that point. And certainly there are statements, you can go to look them up in Fusus al-Hikam by Ibn Arabi that are extremely, extremely difficult to reconcile with orthodoxy, to reconcile with the Quran and Sunnah. So because he was critical, he was put in jail by people who were basically fans of Ibn Arabi. So he was put in jail by people who were fans of Ibn Arabi. And then when he came out and the Sultan recognized his stature, the Sultan had recognized his stature from before, even from before he put him in jail. He was well known, his stature was well known. And the Sultan, when he came out of jail, and the Sultan who was friendly towards him, because there was like change in Salatin, and the Sultan that was friendly, more friendly towards him, brought him to his majlis, and he said to him, "What should I do with them?" He actually intended to execute them. The people who conspired against Imam Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he had, wanted to execute them, not only because they hurt Imam Taymiyyah, but because they sided with his competitor, with the other Sultan that was his competitor that he was able to overthrow. So he wanted, Imam Taymiyyah realized that he wanted him to give him a fatwa to get rid of them, because they sided with his competitor. And Imam Taymiyyah said, if you get rid of those, you will never be able to replace them. They are the pillars of your sultanate. They are the protectors, the guardians of the deen, the pillars of your sultanate, and if you get rid of them, you will never be able to replace them. That is why Ibn Makhluf, the Maliki judge that was very hostile towards Ibn Taymiyyah, says, ما رأينا أفتى من ابن تيمية ما تركنا سبيلا في السعي فيه للسعي فيه أو لإيذائه فلما قدر علينا عفى عنا. We have not seen anyone more chivalrous than Ibn Taymiyyah. We have not left a way, we have not left a rock unturned to hurt him, except that we pursued it. But when he was capable of retaliating, he forgave us. Al-Bakri, that there used to be a lot of hostility between Al-Bakri and Ibn Taymiyyah. And Al-Bakri, it was reported that al-Bakri, the Sultan was looking for al-Bakri. It was reported that Ibn Taymiyyah is the one who mediated, interceded for al-Bakri to be left alone. And it was also reported that al-Bakri was not, did not find any place to hide except in Ibn Taymiyyah's home. So he was hiding in Ibn Taymiyyah's home. All of these things, and this is the behavior with his enemies, not his friends. Behavior with his enemies. And when Ibn al-Qayyim went to share the news of the death of someone who was extremely aggressive with him, hostile towards him, inciting people to beat him, he, got very upset with Ibn al-Qayyim and went immediately to his home, extended his condolences to his family and told them, I will be like him to you. Anything you need, reach out to me. I'm in his place. So that is how he treated his enemies, to the point that someone, one of them said, or like one of his students said, I wish we were to our friends like he was to his enemies. I wish we were to our friends like he was to his enemies. So let me read. That is with people that were aggressive and hostile towards him. But what about, is that all the Ash'aris? Of course not. Absolutely not. These are particular people. But what about, Ash'aris, Ash'ari imams, great scholars, who were not hostile towards him? How was, the chemistry between him and other Ash'ari scholars and imams who were not hostile towards him? And I'll read this to you. This is from Ibn Fadlillah al-Umari في مسالك الأبصار. He says, وكان شيخنا شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية يثني عليه، يعني يثني على شمس الدين الأصفهاني أحسن الثناء ويصفه بالفضل الوافر والعلوم الجمة. قال لي: ما قدم البلاد علينا مثل الشيخ شمس الدين، ورأيت شيخنا الأصفهاني قد زاره مرة فقام إليه ومشى خطوات لتلقيه وعرض عليه أن يجلس مكانه فأبى، وكنا في ذلك الوقت نقرأ عليه، ودخل وأنا أقرأ في المسح على الخفين من العمدة في الأحكام الصغرى، فقال ابن تيمية للأصفهاني: ما نتكلم وأنت حاضر؟ فقال له الأصفهاني: الله الله يا مولانا شيخ السنة أو شيخ السنة. if he's talking to him يناديه يعني مولانا شيخ السنة أو مولانا شيخ السنة وإمام العلماء. فقال لابن تيمية: ما في هذا اليوم قراءة، اليوم يوم فراغ لسماع فوائد الشيخ. وأشار إلى الأصفهاني. وقال ابن تيمية مرة في تقرير مجلس حضره جلة العلماء وحضره الأصفهاني، فتكلم رجل من أعيان العلماء فيه، فقال ابن تيمية: اسكتوا لنسمع ما يقول الشيخ. وأشار إلى الأصفهاني. So, translation of this. So Shamsuddin al-Asfahani was known to be a great Ash'ari scholar of his time, and he visited Damascus. Ibn Fadlillah al-Umari in his book Masalik al-Absar reports this story. Ibn Fadlillah al-Umari was involved in this story. So he reports this story and he says, our Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah praised him, al-Asfahani, that Ash'ari scholar, with the highest praise, and described him as having abundant virtue and extensive knowledge. He once said to me, no one has ever come to our land like Shaykh Shamsuddin al-Asfahani. I saw our Shaykh al-Asfahani visit Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah once, and so Ibn Fadlillah was a student of both. So he was a student of Ibn Taymiyyah and al-Asfahani. So he says, I saw our Shaykh al-Asfahani visit him once, and he stood up, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah stood up to receive him and walked a few steps to greet him, offering him his seat. But al-Asfahani refused. Ibn Taymiyyah said to al-Asfahani, we shall not speak when you're present. To which, and this is something that Ibn Taymiyyah repeatedly said to many scholars, like of basically the Ash'ari background. To which al-Asfahani replied, Allah, Allah, our master, the Shaykh of Sunnah and the Imam of scholars. This is al-Asfahani describing Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah once attended a class that was attended by many prominent scholars, and al-Asfahani was present. So whenever people spoke, Ibn Taymiyyah would tell them, let's listen to the Shaykh. That is al-Asfahani. And al-Asfahani was like an author and a verifying scholar, a great scholar. Now, so the issue here is, and I said this earlier today, these people lived together, they ate together, they learned together, they fought together, they died together, they were buried together, and even when they refuted each other, that does not erase all the above. That does not erase everything else And for us, if we claim to be doing like them, which we're not at all, but if we claim to be doing like them, so do like them all around. Like, if you want to write refutations, write 11 volumes, and let's see if you can come up, even with cut and paste, like that's fine. Yeah, you may not be able to do it even with cut and paste. Write 11 volumes, but maintain the same type of personal relationship. Keep it objective. Keep your refutations objective, and maintain the same warmth in your personal relationship with the rest of the Muslims. So, the idea here is do it for the sake of Allah. If you will ever be involved in polemics, do it for the sake of Allah. Test yourself to see if you're doing it for the sake of Allah. Do it with ilm and adl. Do it with knowledge and justice. And if you're not sure that you fulfill these criteria, we're simplifying things now. It's just like 3 criteria. Under each one, I know that we're running out of time. It's, the adhan is in 3 minutes. Much more to say, but let's simplify, take home message. It's simply 3 criteria: ikhlas, ilm, adl. If you ought to do polemics, make sure that you have ikhlas, sincerity, ilm, knowledge, and adl, justice, and go ahead. But until you have, the prerequisites, until you're confident that you have the prerequisites, get yourself busy worshiping your Lord and learning your deen. There is so much learning to be done, to be had. There is so much that we need to learn about our deen, and there is so much good that needs to be done. One test of sincerity, I talked about disproportionate involvement or engagement in polemics, and I said that you need to diversify your portfolio of worship. So part of this is to see where the needs are, where the greatest need is. And earlier today, I was talking to with the One Path brothers, and I said 22%. This is these statistics are from America. 22% of first-generation Muslims in America leave Islam. I don't know if these statistics are true here or not, but they're probably not too different because it's the same environment. So if that is the case, then what should be the priority? That's also another test of sincerity. Am I doing it for the need of the people? If 22% are leaving Islam, where is the greatest need? Where is the greatest need? Again, I am not against good polemics. I'm against unwarranted polemics that are coming from the lower nafs, that are clearly not for the sake of Allah, that are done without sufficient knowledge, and that are done unjustly. قل قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله.
استقيموا الصلاة، استووا اعتدلوا، لا تذروا فرجات للشيطان. الله أكبر. سبحانك. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين، اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا. ولما رأى المؤمنون الأحزاب قالوا هذا ما وعدنا الله ورسوله وصدق الله ورسوله وما زادهم إلا إيمانا وتسليما. من المؤمنين رجال صدقوا ما عاهدوا الله عليه، فمنهم من قضى نحبه ومنهم من ينتظر وما بدلوا تبديلا. ليجزي الله الصادقين بصدقهم ويعذب المنافقين إن شاء أو يتوب عليهم، إن الله كان غفورا رحيما. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين، اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. ورد الله الذين كفروا بغيظهم لم ينالوا خيرا، وكفى الله المؤمنين القتال، وكان الله قويا عزيزا. وأنزل الذين ظاهروهم من أهل الكتاب من صياصيهم وقذف في قلوبهم الرعب، فريقا تقتلون وتأسرون فريقا، وأورثكم أرضهم وديارهم وأموالهم وأرضا لم تطئوها
وكان الله على كل شيء قديرا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. استغفر الله. استغفر الله. اللهم صل على محمد.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. I'm about to proceed. So now this is time for discussion, Q&A. Any questions about the topic or whatever else? Are we able to get questions from the sisters, or do you guys ignore them? Okay, go ahead, Afi.
Shaykh, sometimes online you see a lot of these discussions are at masjids, but it's almost like the level of knowledge with which they operate, it seems like obviously lacking. Like as you said, who would have read the 7 volumes to be even engaging with the topic? Sometimes maybe it's not sincerity, or it's just that you do not know what you don't know, right? And it's even in supposed circles of knowledge or mosques, these discussions are happening. How can these be rectified? The bar can be raised, wherein the depth of knowledge is properly sort of studied and discussed.
Well, that's a huge problem, and it is not limited to a particular strand or a particular group or a particular type, people of particular theological orientation. It's a general problem in the Ummah. There is certainly a deficiency in terms of the level of knowledge and the depth as well. So we have to encourage people to seek knowledge and to seek it for the right purpose. We have to encourage people to be seeking knowledge. Like here in the West, for instance, we have to encourage people to go to different, you don't have a college here, right? You don't have an Islamic college here, do you? That would be one thing that needs to be done, So spreading proper Islamic knowledge starts from childhood, and so we need to have the programs that will cater to all age groups, but we need to have kawadir. We need to have properly educated da'is and teachers. So you either have your own college here, or colleges here, and seminaries and madrasas or schools, whatever you want to call them, higher education, higher Islamic education. So after you have taken care of the kids, and after you have taught the kids, all the basics, then we need to have very qualified teachers to basically guide the discussions. And then most of the people will need to basically respect the role as a muqallid, and then if they want to propagate what they believe to be the truth, share. I'm using share because everybody is online now. People are hardly talking to each other in person. So share the knowledge, share a good article, well-written article, or a post, a Facebook post, or any post by a qualified scholar. Because even if it is a post, even if it is one page, so much have gone into this one page. 40 years of learning and experience may have gone into this one page. And you may if you look at 2 posts, and certainly a lot of people speak English well, and they have that proficiency in the language. There are 3 different levels of discussion. There is rhetorical, dialectical, and what they call philosophical or substantive, or, the ultimate, the level of discussion is about meanings, and so on. So when it comes to the rhetorical level of discussion, people who speak English people who speak good English and are eloquent. The Prophet ﷺ said, inna min al-bayani la sihra. Some speech works like witchcraft, like sorcery, because eloquence, so you have like two different posts. One of them was written by a person who may have had like 1 year of interrupted education, but both are good sort of both are proficient in English, for instance. They will look the same, but behind one is 40 years of learning and wisdom and experience and ibadah and salah and sincerity and service for the community and understanding of the realities that we live in, and behind the other one is basically sort of some scattered learning here and there, and a lot of selfishness and egotism. They may look the same. So we need educated people, well-educated people to guide the discussions. And then when you have well-educated people guiding the discussions, hopefully, much of the disagreements will continue, because our great scholars have disagreed over multiple issues, but we will be able to navigate the disagreements better and to mitigate some of the harms of basically unqualified people engaging in things that are way above their head. Yes.
With regards to unity, a common reason people find it a problem to unite with, for example, people of a different theological background, is that they say, or their argument is, they're following the wrong aqidah. So how can we unite with them or befriend them? And they really emphasize and magnify this concept of right and wrong aqidah. Can you elaborate on sort of
So this encounter that I just quoted, between Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam Shamsuddin al-Asbahani, these are people that come from different backgrounds, and they basically espouse different, I wish I could, I don't need to say different aqidas, because they have, aqidah really is not, most of this stuff is apologetics. It's not aqidah. Aqidah is to believe in Allah and تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر والقدر خيره وشره. They both believe in the same aqidah in that sense. They believe in Allah and ملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر والقدر خيره وشره. But they have different sort of schools in addressing some of the more intricate issues. And it's mostly apologetics, because Muslims have for more than 100 years did not have the first disagreement among Muslims on Aqidah was the first firqa was Khawarij, right? And then al-Qadariyya came afterwards, and then the Jahmiyya came afterwards. But it went in this order. So Khawarij first, Qadariyya second, the Jahmiyya third. So when that encounter, so Ibn Fadlillah al-Umari, this scholar, this great scholar, he considered these two mashayikh his mashayikh. These are two people coming from different backgrounds when it comes to Aqidah. Most of the students of Imam Taymiyyah were Shafi'is, right? And they had teachers that had, that had subscribed to a different school, a theological school. Most of them most of his students actually were Shafi'i, not, like if you like the famous ones like al-Zahabi, like Ibn Kathir. So, and of course there were Hanbalis, like Ibn al-Qayyim and Ibn Muflih and so on. But he had many Shafi'i scholars. And certainly we are not saying that they were Ash'ari. I'm not saying that Zahabi or Ibn Kathir were Ash'ari necessarily. But I'm saying that they had teachers, mashayikh, who were Ash'ari. So, I don't know, like, how can we not befriend someone who's Muslim? يشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله يصلي الصلوات يصوم يحج. Then certainly, if you basically subscribe to a particular school in Aqidah, I'm not going to tell you confuse yourself. I will tell you don't confuse yourself. Like I'm an Athari, I am sort of self-identifying Athari, declared as Athari. I don't hide it, no problem, no issue whatsoever in identifying as Athari, and at the same time to be friends with your fellow Muslims, your fellow Sunni Muslims. To be friends with your fellow Sunni Muslims and to work with your fellow Sunni Muslims. Like if I were to teach, for instance, fiqh, and so, or if I were to learn fiqh, I will learn fiqh from anyone. I have like certainly many mashayikh who are Ash'ari. You learn fiqh from anyone who can teach proper fiqh according to the Sunni methodology. So if you want to learn the mustalah, so I'm not telling you that we're going to only be friends, like we're going to only eat mansaf together or biryani together. We're going to be even learning together. I'm going to be even learning from you. I don't necessarily have to confuse myself. At some point, I will also learn from you Aqidah, because I will be stable in my own Aqidah, or again, the word Aqidah. We all have the same Aqidah ultimately, but I will learn your school, I'll learn about your school, and I'll learn it from you eventually. That is when you get to the point of comparative Aqidah. Just like in comparative fiqh, you will have to establish yourself first in your madhab, and then you learn about other madhahib. And you learn about other madhahib from the people, the masters of those madhahib. So if you're Athari, you have to establish yourself well in your Athari Aqidah, but then to learn about Ash'ari Aqidah from Athari books, that doesn't make much sense. For an Ash'ari to learn about Athari Aqidah from Ash'ari books, that doesn't make much sense. When you have established yourself, you have gone through level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Because like in Aqidah, you don't want to go into comparative Aqidah until you have really established yourself. Which does not mean a little bit of exposure is wrong. It does not mean that you should not have any exposure until you go through level. But to learn seriously, another school of Aqidah, you want to be established first in yours. Just like in fiqh, but a little bit more than fiqh, because Aqidah is a little bit more confusing, and our disagreements in fiqh are not, are not that much of an issue at the end of the day. But keep in mind that there is also one thing that I wanted to bring up, which is the distinction between Aqidah and fiqh when it comes to disagreement. When it comes to mujtahideen making mistakes, mujtahideen making mistakes. If the person is a mujtahid, a qualified to be a mujtahid, and he makes a mistake in aqidah or in fiqh, is there a difference between a mistake made in aqidah and a mistake made in fiqh, given that the person is a qualified mujtahid? Actually, this is when largely Atharis would be a lot more tolerant. So most of the mutakallimin would make a distinction between a mistake in aqidah and a mistake in fiqh. So Imam Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah said that distinction is a Mu'tazili distinction, is something introduced by the Mu'tazila. The distinction between al-furu' wal-usul. Al-furu' wal-usul is a distinction that was made by the Mu'tazila. And, treating the mujtahideen differently when they err in matters of fiqh versus matters of aqidah, that distinction was started by the Mu'tazila. And he argues that it's about qat'i and dhanni, not about usul and furu'. So if you make a mistake in fiqh in a matter that is qat'i, you are as blameworthy as someone who makes a mistake in aqidah in a matter that is qat'i. So, like, if you come up with a fatwa that you can combine Asr and Maghrib, are you blameworthy or not? Or can you say this is furu', not usul, and the mujtahid in furu' is forgiven and they get one reward? But if you say, it's okay to combine Asr and Maghrib, let alone saying Khamr is halal, for instance. But if you say it's okay to combine Asr and Maghrib, so you're blameworthy. In matters of Aqidah, the same applies. Now, the contention against this proposition is, but that means that al-Yahud and Nasara are okay, and all the firaq al-Dalla are okay, and everything is... No. The distinction is between qat'i and dhanni. Whoever said that believing in Allah is dhanni, whoever said that the greatness of Allah and is dhanni, whoever said that takfir, adam takfir murtakib al-kabira, is dhanni, or to avoid making takfir on the sinners. Whoever said that denying al-qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, denying predestination, is dhanni. These are qat'iyat. You're not allowed to make mistakes in these matters. So whether it is this or that, the distinction is between qat'i and dhanni, not between usul and furu'. Yet, you may say, try to be more careful in usul. Try to be more cautious in usul, because matters of aqidah, come before fiqh. Aqidah is more important. Being careful about your aqidah, is your belief system, is more important. More important in what sense? In the sense of to be cautious, to be careful, but not in the sense that you should put more effort, particularly for the for the public. Imam Taqiyuddin rahimahullah says that al-amma ma'murun bil-jumal duna at-tafasil. They are not required to know, they are not asked or required to know when it comes to aqidah. So in matters of fiqh, they are ma'murun bil-tafasil. Because in matters of fiqh, you are commanded and required and responsible to learn the fiqh in detail. You have to learn fiqh as-salah in detail. If you are a trader, you have to learn the fiqh of trading in detail. If you're getting married, you need to learn that fiqh in detail. So in matters of fiqh, you need to learn things in detail. In matters of aqidah, he said that the public should not need to learn in detail. Al-jumal dun at-tafasil. And then he said at-tafasil that cause fitna between people and cause infighting between people. When people are exposed to matters of to the detailed matters of aqidah prematurely, without being qualified, without being prepared, without being ready for that exposure will cause them fitna, and it will cause infighting. So in matters of aqidah, we are supposed to teach al-jumal dun al-tafasil to the public. In matters of fiqh, we are supposed to teach in detail, because they need to be, all you need to know, about Allah wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wa al-yawm al-akhir wa al-qadar khayrihi wa sharrihi is al-jumal, so sort of the principles in generalities. So you need to know about the greatness of Allah, the existence of Allah, the greatness of His names and attributes, that He is the only Lord, the Master, the Owner, the Disposer of affairs, the only one that deserving of worship. All of these matters must be known, but not the intricacies. The intricacies are not needed. But when it comes to fiqh, you need to know how to exactly pray, and everything in detail. So then we can eat together, we can live together, we can fight together, we can basically do everything together. And when it comes to learning fiqh, we can be learning fiqh together. You could be like Ibn Fadlillah al-Umari and have two teachers. One of them is, Ibn Taymiyyah, and the other one is Shamsuddin al-Asbahani. He did not have a great problem to have those two teachers. But, like I said, don't confuse yourself. So just get yourself established first in your own school, and then to be fair to other schools, learn them from the masters of those schools. Because oftentimes when people discuss other schools, they may not be as sort of accurate as the masters of those schools in describing the other schools. Anyway, I don't see where the problem is. Like if you go out, and I don't think that this is as bad as like people may think. I don't think that this has gotten that bad. So I don't think that people who say that how could you befriend them if they don't go out to have like dinner together? They just wouldn't go out to have dinner with someone from. I don't think it's that bad. No, it can't be that bad. Huh? Who pays the bill?
It all happens online, so anyway,
So it's all happening online, yeah. So people are not even meeting, they're not even meeting their fellows from the same school, I guess.
So Sheikh, just to add to what Sheikh Labib was mentioning, the answer is going to be your question, does that actually happen? It actually does. I'm in my 40s, and I was here when, in Australia, when the English Salafi Dawah was rising. And my first class was the 10 matters that take out the fold of Islam.
Okay. So.
And I was extreme. I had to relearn and unlearn, so that's part of the problem too.
Okay, so I have something, I've written something, because Salafism always gets like a little bit of unfair criticism. There are a lot of problems with, modern Salafism, but gets also unfair criticism. You will not find Salafis as harsh with Imam al-Ghazali as you may find, others. The harshness that people exhibit towards Imam ibn Taymiyyah and Imam ibn al-Qayyim and others, you won't find Salafis this harsh. You won't find this much takfir. I was just reading in a blog a blog that is known, like a popular blog, and so every time they talk about Ibn al-Qayyim, they say al-Mujassim Ibn al-Qayyim. So they repeated Mujassim meaning the anthropomorphist, Ibn al-Qayyim. And they repeated this like 200 times in the article. So, and al-Mujassim to them is al-Kafir. Al-Mujassim to them is like synonymous with al-Kafir. So let's also be fair. I was critical of Salafi excesses before, from the 90s, from the early 90s, before it became fashionable, before bashing Salafism became fashionable. It only became fashionable 10 years after I was, very critical of Salafi excesses. But because I saw the beauty of, like, what I subscribed to when it comes to Salafism is the beauty of Salafism, and I have an article about this. If you put my name and Salafism, was Rasulullah Salafi? And I, if you put was Rasulullah Salafi and put my name, the article would come up. And I describe, what my perspective of Salafism, my perspective of what that means in the three main domains: Aqidah, Fiqh, and Suluk. Aqidah, Fiqh, and Suluk. So the issue here is these excesses, and this is not a new thing, by the way. So this is not a new thing in our ummah. We have to be aware that they used to pray 4 different jama'as around the Kaaba. We have to be aware that Hanafis and Shafi'is had not all, of course not all of them, and not the greatest imams, but there were fatwa between the Hanafis and Shafi'is that prevented intermarriage. So it was okay for a Hanafi to marry a Christian, but not a Shafi'i. Well, no, that is documented, that is confirmed, that is historical. Because the Shafi'iyya, they make istithna in Iman to say, Ana mu'min insha'Allah. Saying Ana mu'min insha'Allah, that istithna means that your Iman is basically, you're reluctant about your Iman. It is not like an affirmative statement. It's not an assertion. It is, so therefore, their Iman is invalid. And therefore you cannot marry a Shafi'iyya. You cannot marry a Shafi'iyya woman, according to some Hanafi. And certainly the Shafi'is would have to respond. And they would have to find reasons to say you can't marry a Hanafiyya. These things happened in our ummah. Ibn Tomart killed tens of thousands of people because he believed they were anthropomorphist. They believed they were anthropomorphist. So al-Maqrizi in his book on Tariq speaks about how people used to go around and say whoever believes in other than what Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari believes in. Imam Abu al-Hasan, great Imam, Allah yarhamu, but he was not the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But Imam al-Maqrizi reports that they used to go around the streets and say, whoever believes otherwise, other than what Imam Abu al-Hasan believed in, is halal al-mal wa dam, is basically murtad, and then his blood and his life and his property are not inviolable. Imam al-Shirazi said in his book that whoever believes, this is the aqeedah of Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, whoever believes otherwise is kafir. So we do have that history. Certainly the great imams from all groups, Like you will not find Imam Taymiyyah saying that. You will not find Imam al-Ghazali saying that. You will not find Imam al-Nawawi saying that. So imams from different, the verifying imams from different backgrounds, they did not say that. But these things did happen in our history. And these excesses were committed in our history. So to be fair, to be fair, we should not be sort of placing the blame on a particular group, but we should be blaming anyone who commits excesses, anyone who disrupts or basically disturbs the unity of the ummah or commits excesses, regardless of their background. They're Salafi, they're Ash'ari, they're Athari, they're Mutakallim. Anyone who commits excesses is blameworthy. But assigning the blame to one group is counterproductive. It's not going to be helpful eventually. Now, so why were the Salafis basically responsible for much of the chaos that happened? Because they felt empowered, and it goes in cycles. Whoever feels empowered, they start to basically become aggressive and commit transgression. So because of the spread of the Dawah, the quick spread of the Dawah, they felt empowered, and then they became aggressive, and that happens, but that goes in cycles. That does go in cycles. So we have to combat excessiveness, extremism, aggression from any source. And we have to be all committed to this. And like in America, for instance, I teach in institutions that are I go to institutions that are predominantly Maturidi. They're open, to someone like me. I'm open to people like them. So there is goodness, and from every group, there are those people who want basically to reconcile and who want to heal the wounds, and who want to, in the beginning of my book on the divine attributes, I said we need two things: measured exposure, disagree, and love. Measured exposure is to know, what to teach when, and to whom. And then disagree and love is to be able to disagree and continue to have affection for your fellow believers, and to go out together, to have biryani together, or maqluba, whatever it is you want.
That requires high-level emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Yes. No, there are differences between those groups. However, so let's say that Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, when was that term coined, and what was it used for, and what purpose was it for? Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, if we say that the first person who used that term is Ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhu, the word Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the title Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, then based on within this historical context, what was it referring to? What did earlier, scholars and predecessors use it for? To sort out the people who adhere to the Sunnah of the Prophet and accept the credibility of the Sahaba, the conveyors, the transmitters of the Sunnah of the Prophet. I think that if you respect the Sunnah and you accept the credibility of the Sahaba, and you don't violate, basically accepting the Sunnah, meaning that you're accepting the proper Islamic hermeneutics. Of course, no one disagrees over the Quran. So if you accept the Sunnah, you're accepting the Quran, and you're accepting that the Sunnah is the best explanation of the Quran, and you're accepting, if you admit that, if you accept the credibility of the Sahaba, you're also accepting that the best interpretation is the interpretation of the Sahaba. That's it. That is what Ahl Sunnah al Jama'ah means. So accepting the Sunnah, accepting the credibility of the Sahaba and the superiority of the Sahaba is what this word means, the first community. The Jama'ah, when Ibn Abbas talks about the Jama'ah, which Jama'ah? The Sahaba, the first generation, the first community. So if you believe in the Quran and Sunnah, right? And you accept the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, respect to them, and you believe that they are superior to us, right? You're Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. That's it. We're done. Okay, well, the word Salafi itself, it depends, any word, any title, it doesn't matter, the titles don't matter. What matters is what you mean by them. What you mean by them. So, people who say, I am Salafi, or I don't say I'm Salafi, I don't use the word Salafi as a title. I believe in Salafism in the sense that, that I describe in the article. I've written this article about Salafism, so you can go ahead and read it. So I believe in that. I believe in the way and sort of the approach to the Deen, espoused by, upheld by and espoused by the first generation. And this have distinct qualities. Did their approach to the Deen have distinct qualities? I believe it did. In Aqidah, in Fiqh, in Suluk. But then you can take that word and add to it whatever you want to add. Then, once you add to it too many things, the disagreements arise, and then we start to fight. So people who identify as Salafis, they're not all the same. There are so many different types of Salafis. Therefore, we should just be content with Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah as a name that was coined by the Sahaba. So it takes its strength from the Sahaba, and basically respect and appreciate the way of the righteous predecessors. So try to and that is not something that you could learn. That is not something that someone, even the article I wrote about this, it's not going to give you it's not going to give you proper, or certainly not complete, but even sufficient. It's not going to give you sufficient conceptualization of the way of the first generation until you try to learn about, the first generation, if the fatwa of the Sahaba, the ibadah of the Sahaba, Sahaba's approach, the Sahaba's interpretation of the ayat and ahadith, the Sahaba's approach to the deen. So this is like a lifelong pursuit to be as close as you can to the way of the first generation. You want to learn more and more and more about the first generation. Because as Imam Malik said, لن يصلح أمر آخر هذه الأمة إلا بما صلح به أولها. So the affairs of the latter generations of this ummah will not be rectified except with that which rectified the affairs of the first. Yes?
Regarding some of the political differences that exist within the Islamic community, Muslims on the opposite side of the spectrum will inevitably side with and work with also non-Muslims, which can create more tension. How would you say that we can approach these political differences, and do these need to be championed by people with Islamic knowledge, or at least advised by people with Islamic knowledge?
The Muslims early had political differences, you said?
No, I'm talking about Muslims today with political differences.
Muslims today with political differences. So Muslims today with political differences, they have to understand that they should not bring their political differences into our community to cause disunion and disruption within our community. I am completely for Muslims working in different spaces, because it is going to be extremely difficult to say, work with the right, work with the left. You cannot make a demand, you cannot make a theologically based demand of Muslims to work with the right or the left, because neither the right nor the left are in alignment with. So if you're working with the right or working with the left, you're working to mitigate harm and to bring about the most benefit that you can. It's not like the right is in alignment with our deen or the left is in alignment with our deen. You're basically trying to mitigate as much harm as possible, bring about as much benefit as possible, and contribute positively to the discourse, for the well-being of the general society. You guys are in Australia, your grandkids will likely be here, and so the well-being of Australia you should be interested in the well-being of the country, because if your grandkids will be here, then it matters to you. Then it should matter to you, the well-being of the country. So you're trying to contribute as much as you can, to mitigate as much harm as you can, to bring about as much benefit as you can, but neither the right nor the left aligns with our values. Therefore, we cannot make any demands of Muslim politicians, Muslim activists, to work with the right versus the left or the left versus the right. We would say, whichever space you work in, just try to be sensitive, try to be loyal to our values as much as you can, and do not bring those disagreements or tensions back to our community, so that we have another reason to disagree and fight. We already have enough. So keep the political ones, work when whichever space you want, and keep the political difference away from us to not cause further disruption of our unity. Yes?
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
Would you still say that same statement when it comes to particular and specific causes, for example, the Palestine issue? Let's say we're not entirely aligned with one side or the other, but maybe one side, for the moment, aligns more with our interest for the cause.
Well, that is why you will need to work in both spaces. You will need to work in all spaces, so that whenever you will have representatives in that space, and you have a representative in that space, so whenever you need, to push here or there, you will have representatives. And then as a community, you should not have, didn't Churchill say, Britain does not have permanent enemies or friends? So that's a valid concept. You should be basically, it should be about your interests. And if one side will serve your interests, at as one point, and then the another side will be more serving to your interests at another point, you'll vote right now, you'll vote left then, and you don't have permanent loyalty to the right or the left. Yes. No. Yeah.
With regards to a bit of a different topic altogether, with regards to the many gaps that we find in the Muslim community, particularly in the West, could you please provide perhaps a metric or a roadmap of sorts for projects, or how to choose a project to contribute to personally?
How do you personally choose a project to contribute to? It depends on two things, the needs of the community and your skill sets. So you will have to do the matching yourself. You'll have to say, these are the needs of the communities, these are the priorities of the communities, and these are my skill sets. And do the matching. Figure out where where is the need, and how you match those needs with your skill sets. because people have different skill sets, aptitudes, capacities, also interests and dispositions. So based on your dispositions, based on your interests, some people are like kind by nature. They like relief work. They like to feed the hungry. They like to take care of the homeless. They like, that is their personal disposition. Don't fight your personal disposition. You will probably excel in that which you like the most. You will excel in that which you like the most. Go with your personal dispositions. Some people are more interested in knowledge. The people who are more interested in knowledge, are actually the most dangerous ones. So they need to be careful with their intentions, because knowledge, just sitting here is a fitna. That is why the scholars used to basically warn of al-mazabih. These are the slaughterhouses. Al-maharib, they used to call them al-mazabih, the slaughterhouses. Anyone who sits, next to the mihrab in the front of the masjid is basically sitting in a slaughterhouse, is basically offering himself as a sacrifice. So you just need to remember that من تعلم العلم ليماري به العلماء ليجاري به العلماء ويماري به السفهاء ويصرف إليه وجوه الناس أدخله الله جهنم. Whoever learns this knowledge, this is the knowledge of Allah. It is meant to bring you closer to Allah. But if you take that knowledge that is meant to bring you closer to Allah, learn it so that you can compete with the scholars, or boast, with the scholars, or argue with the fools, and grab people's attention. That's يَصْرِفُ وُجُوهَ النَّاسِ إِلَيْهِ, to direct people's faces to you, to make everybody listen to you. Like people say, to be the most interesting person in the room. So then أَدْخَلَهُ اللَّهُ جَهَنَّمْ, Allah will admit him into the hellfire. Truly, أَدْخَلَهُ اللَّهُ, that's what the Prophet said, أَدْخَلَهُ اللَّهُ جَهَنَّمْ. So you need to figure out if, and keep in mind, you will have a little bit of that. The problem is, everybody has a little bit of that. Everybody will enjoy to speak. Speaking is a shahwa. Everybody enjoys when they speak and people listen to them. The issue here is that you need to resist this, and you need to at least to make sure it is not dominant. At least to make sure that whenever it flares up on you, you're able to suppress it. And it is not dominant. It's not why you're doing this. It's not why you're spending hours on end learning or memorizing and doing this. And if you're able to squeeze it and push it, suppress it, suffocate it, and keep it in check, you should be fine. Because it's not like you're going to be able to eliminate it completely. Our righteous predecessors were very, basically aware of this. And Sufyan al-Thawri said, مَا عَلَجْتُ شَيْئًا أَشَدَّ عَلَيَّ مِن نِيَّتِي. I have not dealt with anything that was harder on me than my niyyah. Imam Ahmad, they asked him, every hadith that you taught, you learned and you taught was for the sake of Allah. He said, that مَا كَانَ لِلَّهِ فَهُوَ عَزِيز. Whatever is for the sake of Allah is basically what? Aziz means rare and expensive. لكن أمر حبب إلينا. He said that it's something that was made beloved to us, or that was beautified to us. Aware, conscious, aware of this issue. So whatever it is that you will do, you just need to make sure that you have the right intentions. So the people who come and sweep and mop and take care of logistics and take care of the there's not that much shahwa in that. There's not much shahwa in that, and wallahi that it's just safe. It is safe. It is pure reward. So, anyways, see what your skill sets are, what the needs of the community are, and try to do the matching and diversify your portfolio. There is a portfolio of ibadah. If you're specialized in one thing and that one thing happened to be learning and speaking and being like a leader and being an imam and all of that stuff, nothing is more dangerous than this. Nothing is more dangerous than this. Imam Ibn Qayyim said that some of the people, يُشِيرُونَ إِلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ, they're pointing all the time to themselves, and they pretend or think that they are pointing to Allah. Yeah.
Just to bounce off that last point in particular, a question I want to ask you, brother, I'd rather reshape it and go publicly instead. So, as students of knowledge, inshallah, or lovers of knowledge, and the positions that some of us do hold in the community, we affirm that we aren't scholars in any right. However, we do get asked questions due to the amount of ignorance in our society and community that require scholarly response. We know the responses of the scholars, but we know their responses that are very particular, that made a need. So I'll give you an example. A sister came today, turns out she owes about 300 days in fasting. Over the years and whatnot, you can visibly tell the sister is not practicing. Visibly you can tell she's not practicing. Right, so just to paint the picture. We're going to get outside the realm of the former there and be giving a response to her. That would safeguard her deen and whatnot. However, we are not in the position to be able to do so. We aren't muftis, we're not mujtahideen or anything like that. How do we safeguard ourselves while also helping this sister? Because it is a scarcity of mashayikh in Australia, so we tend to step up in positions where we shouldn't be doing that. How do we safeguard ourselves? That's why, for example, I was going to ask you the question, even though I know that most likely will come back to Ibn Abbas's opinion and the whole argument behind that and whatnot, but I don't feel comfortable in answering that without coming to someone like yourself. But 99% of the time, I would understand the background behind it, and I could meet the sister's need at that time instead of saying, hey, hold on, I'll get back to you in a day, for example. You know, it's that relief of anxiety per se. Could you assist in how do we safeguard ourselves in that regard, and where does it stop for us?
So, أمثل طلاب العلم, the mufti of the town is أمثل طلاب العلم فيها. Because, we're not talking about a town. We're talking about in every masjid, because, you can't say to her, go to, So, أمثل طلاب العلم, the best of طلاب العلم in that town, the most knowledgeable of the people in that neighborhood, in that masjid, in that particular sort of. And then for أمثل طلاب العلم, I think that they will be safe if they choose any position from any one of the four madhahib. And they would also be safe if they choose a position outside of the madhahib that meets these criteria. One, it is not completely abandoned. Let me tell you.
So would that be shab? So it's not shab?
Yes. So it's outside of the four madhahib, but it is not completely abandoned. It is a position of one of the mujtahideen, a position of a mujtahid, not completely abandoned. وَلَهُ حَظٌّ مِّنَ النَّظَرِ. And it has some substantiation, حظ من النظر, some substantiation. And then so these criteria. Then it has been mainstreamed by widespread acceptance or collective ijtihad. Fatwa councils and collective. So, for instance, I always mention this because it's a common one. It's known that 3 divorces counting as one. 3 divorces is counting as one. This is a position that is not in any one of the 4 madhab. That does not mean that no one from the madhabis have ever said that. No, it doesn't. It means it's not the mu'tamad, the authorized position. But certainly, several Malikis had said that before Imam Taqiyuddin. The position is basically, it's named after Imam Taqiyuddin because he is the one who put together a full defense of that position. A full defense of that position. When people say that Ibn Hazm says musiqa is halal or music is halal, is Ibn Hazm the only one? Of course not. Is Ibn Hazm the first one? Of course not. So why do they say it's because he's the one who put together a defense for that position? So Imam Taqiyuddin is the one who put together a defense for 3 divorces counting as one. So it is a position of a mujtahid. He was recognized. Of course, some people froth at the mouth whenever they hear his name, but even his opponents recognize that he was a mujtahid. And it has some validation because it was reported in Sahih Muslim that the Prophet said that 3 divorces counted as one during the time of the Prophet and Abu Bakr and the beginning of the Khilafah of Umar until Umar made them count as 3. So this is a hadith in Muslim. And so it has been mainstreamed by widespread acceptance. So the laws in different Muslim countries, like in Jordan, in Egypt, in Syria, in Saudi Arabia, and many Muslim countries have accepted this, and these are scholars, the muftiin. That these are we're talking about a very large number of scholars who have been given this fatwa. A student of knowledge should be very comfortable relaying that fatwa. Really, it's outside of the 4 madhab. So I said any fatwa that is mu'tamad of any of the 4 madhab, the student of knowledge should not hesitate to share it with people. But then the fatwa that are outside of the mu'tamad of the 4 madhab, there is one more step to verify that this is not an abandoned position. It's a position of a mujtahid, and it has some widespread acceptance. Widespread acceptance does not mean consensus, does not mean agreement, but scores of scholars have accepted that position. Scores of scholars have accepted that position. Can someone say that Zawaj al-Mut'a, temporary marriage is okay? Okay, why not? Ibn Abbas said it was okay. But whether or not Ibn Abbas retracted it, took it back, but it's an abandoned position, clearly abandoned. Among Ahl Sunnah, this is a clearly rejected, abandoned position. So it does not meet the criteria. So I think that because what if we stop responding to people's questions? What if Tullab al-Ilm stop to people's questions? What happens? Well, I hate to say this, but I get more messages on WhatsApp than I can handle, like 20 times more than what I can handle. So we just can't do this. People will need to get answers. And oftentimes, for the last 3 days, I have not been responding. And so these people who did not get an answer, they need to go to their masjid and someone needs to give them an answer. So don't feel guilty if you give an answer of a mujtahid, whether it is the mu'tamad of a madhab of the madhahib or another position that has been widely accepted, mainstreamed. Yeah. I like it. Yeah, well, you guys are ignoring this. Huh? Okay.
Yeah, but there's no questions from what I've...
So, Shaykh, we're not abandoning the sisters. His wife's downstairs and there's none.
They don't have any questions? Everything's clear?
I've got a couple. So, to summarize one of the first questions, you had mentioned that you did da'wah perhaps from an earlier age, and may Allah reward you for that. She's asking, is there a type of minimum education level or some type of minimum standard before you should start doing any da'wah work? Or can you always start in whatever capacity is within your capability?
You can start, like, it's not about age, by the way. It's not about age. She says that I started early. I do regret that I started early. But it's not about age. It's about what is it that you're sharing with people. What is it that you're sharing with people? So if you're going to be talking to people about the importance of praying 5 times a day, and you're 8 years old, please go ahead. If you're 8 years old and you're going to remind people to fast in Ramadan, please go ahead. Without any knowledge. I don't worry about anything. Don't cite any ayat or hadith. Just if you want to go ahead and remind people that they need to fast in Ramadan, please go ahead. Please go ahead and remind people to fast in Ramadan and do everything. So it is about what is it that you mastered. Like, all Muslims have mastery of the obligation of the 5 daily prayers, the fasting in Ramadan, the zakah, the wujub of zakah. Of course, you're not going to tell people how much is zakah and the recipients and stuff unless you have a little bit more more knowledge. But it depends on what is it that you're going to, like, given da'wah, talking to people about the importance of sidq and the prohibition of ghiba. What's wrong? What's wrong in talking to people about these things? Certainly, the only caveat here is that whenever you talk to people about Islam, they think right away that you're a mufti. Anyone who gives a khutbah, people will think right away that they are a mufti. And they would ask him about the most difficult questions, life and death, just because he gave the khutbah. And the person may have been the first time he gives a khutbah, and he may have been working on it for the last week, trying to put together, and just, from Google and stuff. And then he would have people coming and asking him about, life and death. So what you need to do is, Allahu A'lam. Ibn Abbas said, or Ibn Mas'ud said, he who doesn't know how to say Allahu A'lam is destroyed. Is destroyed. That's all you need to do. To practice, to give da'wah, go ahead please and give da'wah, given that you have the capacity and the courage to say Allahu A'lam. Allah knows best. And Allah knows best. قل قولي هذا أستغفر الله لك سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.